5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. What is going on, guys? The NBA betting market for January 4th, 2021. Thanks for joining us. Fat Guy, we're going to start off with the Cavs Magic game. The Magic opened as 5-point favorites. They've been bet up to 5.5-point favorites. They've received 54% of bets. There's only 340 bets on this game, though, so not a lot of market
really minimal
to go off of. There's not a lot to talk about against the spread there, so I'm just going to jump straight to the money line. Magic minus 196. They jump up to minus 210. Interesting to note, though, that 95% of bets have been put on the Cavaliers money line.
You could make this argument, though. The spread moved to half point, -5 to -5.5. So you could say it's to extrapolate. It's possible that half point is worth 14 2/10. So, you know what I mean? That I guess that's how much that half point is probably worth. We're still learning, right? Again, that would just be a really rough translation, but that would add to the amount of data we have over a long period. That would tell us. That would give us the value of that point. So that is interesting to note.
The OU opened at 218 for the Cavs Magic. It's been bet down to 217, and 68% of bettors have helped push that under down 1 point.
Lateral movement, too. It's probably not pushed over the threshold. The only thing I'm finding interesting about this market is the lack of interest, considering, you know what I mean? It's the first game on the docket. It's the closest to us, yet it has significantly less bets than the game after it, and even then. And then realistically, is there that much lack of interest between the Cavaliers Magic and the Hornets 76ers?
I think it's more to do with when the line came out. It looks like it came out about 4 hours ago, so some of these have been up overnight. You and I have no clue why this game opened late compared to the other ones. I'm sure there
probably
is
some injury or COVID scare, something in that nature.
Yeah, something like that. So that's most likely why there is not that many bets. But however, it's harder for us to make market decisions when there is so little bets. So this is one of those games that you'd have to wait until tip off before you were really going to make a decision if you were going to bet that game. Fat Guy, next up we have a 7 p.m. Eastern time start, 870 bets. Charlotte Hornets taking on the Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers open as 9.5-point favorites. They've been bet down to 8.5-point favorites. 63% of bets have been on the Hornets. 87% of the money on the Hornets, helping drive that line down 1 point.
Yeah, that seems like a lateral move. The only thing that I'm really enjoying these money line conversions, because is really going from 9.5 to 8.5 worth 41 3/50. I don't think so. Like, if you look at the money line, it'd be hard for me to imagine that 1 point is worth that much on the money line. So, I mean, for me, obviously, that would the advantage play would lean towards, for me, at least at a cursory glance, to 8.5 points there. That just seems like a really big dip in the money line, 350 to 309, whereas just 9.5 to 8.5. I mean, I don't know key numbers in basketball, at least we don't yet. So, it's just a really interesting correlation between the two, because I don't think they're congruent, those two markets.
I'm just pulling up some information here on key numbers. So interesting enough, the difference between 9 and 8 is it's about 5%. So it does add up with that money line. It seems like
5%.
Yeah, 4%, 5%, 5%, 5%. We're gonna have to dig deeper into that, because that's gonna be on both sides. It's not completely telling the truth.
No.
So the that's something that we can study up and let you guys know as we get more familiar with this market. Let's jump to the OU for this game, which it opened at 219. It's been bet up to 222. 54% of bets on the over, and 92% of the money, helping push that line up 3 points.
I mean, that makes sense. It's most of the money is on the over. They're trying to incentivize the under. I always wonder that, though, like, if you end up getting a lot of money on the over and at like over 219, and then you have to move it twice, and then you get a lot of money in the under, you could end up middling yourself there, right? You know, with a total that ends in 220, 221, 222. right? Where you lose one, tie one, or you lose both. So I've always been interested in how they mitigate that type of risk, right? So the OU, it's pretty standard fare, I would say. But like I said, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting when the resistance point is, when the buyback is on the under,
And
because
the other
clearly it's not
interesting
yet.
Yeah, the other interesting thing I'll add on to what you're saying is that books usually tend to have lower maximums when these lines come out. So they can, let's say an OU, normally, let's say you could bet at I'm not going to plug any books, but some books, let's say you could bet up to $50,000 on one over under. They might open that up 24 hours before, but you can only bet 10 grand on it. So some of those sharp bettors who jump on early might max out at that 10 grand and help push that line up 1 or 2 points. That way, when people do come back in, closer to $50,000, the line has been adjusted and they can make their money back, having more people bet late.
Isn't that interesting commentary on the human condition? They can end up with this unfavorable spot that I'm describing, but they can rely on like people that have to bet. And that's why, like, realistically, I've tried to condition our audience. I'm sorry, I'm doubling up on that term. To like, we're not gambling here. You know what I mean? We're trying to take an advantage play. So this is a good indicator. Sorry, this is a good example of they can obviously count on people having to bet and not understanding what's value, what isn't, just having to bet because their gut tells them so. So this is really, I don't know. This kind of stuff just makes me, if you can gamble on this early to get an idea, it means you must be really, really confident in, I guess, the human condition, having to gamble on this. And it's so bizarre to me that's real life and not fantasy.
Speaking of fantasies, let's move on to the Knicks-Hawks games. There's 794 bets on this 7:30 p.m. Eastern time start. Hawks opened as 6-point favorites. They've been bet up to 7-point favorites, and they have received 73% of bets, 92% on the money. So everything pushing that line up 1 point for the Hawks. And the money line for this game, Fat Guy, opened -224. They've been bet up to -284, 92% of bets on the Hawks money line as well. This market could just continually creep up higher and higher for the Hawks, who I'm going to add a little note here on the Discord. Someone just posted that the Atlanta Hawks first quarter and first half against the spread are a perfect 6-0 in their first 6 games.
Well, I mean, is that the news driving it up or something against the Knicks? Because if anything, that makes me like the Knicks. And look at the juice on that, too. You don't have to be right very often with Knicks +7. You know what I mean? You could probably be right, 50.6%?
Yeah.
To break even, roughly?
I think it's 50.4, but either way, it's you don't have to be right.
I mean,
in against the spread, especially when someone else earlier in the Discord shared that Fox Bet charges -125 to -133 juice on every single spread game for the NFL playoffs. Like, that just makes you sick.
How can anyone, you see what I mean? Going back, I guess I create these narratives every time, but that's the human condition. I guess that would only attract insanely square bettors unless you have a really bum line. So it's kind of like when they do like those Nigerian prince emails about how if you give them money, you're going to get millions of dollars back. They write them in a way that it only attracts the type of people that would fall for their ruse, right?
Man,
and
I've sent a lot of money to Nigeria in my time.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's right? That's a safer investment than betting with Fox Bet. Like, that's crazy.
Sure, but yeah. So that's, I mean, we'll have to do some more investigating on that, because even I find that outlandish, and I'm curious, not to make a wager, but I'm curious at how that works. But conversely, -102, those are great numbers, right? And also, too, this is another interesting, when you correlate the juice that it opened and the line movement, because it shifted not only with the Knicks, the juice shifted as well, that's accumulates to 47 2/45 on the money line. So that's interesting too. I'm liking these little correlations because, I come from a football betting background, so this type of shift in points wouldn't correlate nearly. So it stands out to me at least. So I'm very, very curious what the key numbers end up being at the end of the season.
The OU for this game, it opened at 222. It's been bet up to 223. 85% of bettors on the over, 98% of the money on the over, and the juice on the over at 223 is minus 110.
Yeah, it's standard. They're trying to incentivize betting the under because they have everybody betting the over. And what better way to incentivize at least someone like me is now you only need. I could do the math easy on this one. If the juice is at 100, you only need a 50% win record to break even, and that might be plausible at 223. So interesting stuff here as well.
On to Thunder Heat. 643 bets early on. The Heat opened as 8-point favorites at even. They've been bet up to -9 at -105. 54% of bettors are on the Heat. The money line has moved a ton, though. -325 to -395. 91% of money line bets are on the Miami Heat in this game.
Speaking of lack of congruency on the money line, did this line even move? -8 to -9 with juice at -105. That would be a micro move, if anything, right? Because I mean, God, I bet you that's in a lateral movement. I really do. Because -8 at even money and -9 at -105. That's I don't know. That's
I think you're getting mixed up there. That's actually a bigger jump.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I got it mixed up.
So it's like a point and a half, essentially.
It's a point and a half. Yeah, I got it reversed.
Because I thought the same thing when I looked at it originally, but the Miami Heat money line made me realize that it wasn't. But it's interesting to see that this line has moved as much as it has. Especially, it's weird that it opened up +8 at -110. So it looked like they were ready to receive a lot of sharp bets on the Thunder at +8, and it doesn't look like that happened. So people did like the Heat. But who knows what kind of news came out from when this line came out till now, maybe helping push that line up. Let's move on to the OU for this game. It opened 214. It's been bet up to 215, despite only 43% of bettors being on the over. But out of those 43%, 90% of the money has been bet on the over, fat guy.
Yeah. I mean, that seems lateral as well. So I'm still stuck on make my little error earlier, but it still seems the money line. I wonder if that's actually congruent. So it's pretty standard fare as far as the OU goes.
Celtics Raptors. There's 870 bets on this game. Raptors opened as 3-point favorites, and they've been bet up to -4.5. 53% of bettors and 99% of the money has helped push that line up 1.5 plus the juice.
Yeah, and see this makes more sense to me because as far as congruency with the money line, because they have better juice and a better number open, and then it's currently a worse juice and a worse number, and then you're gonna say, well, it's only 43 points from -142 to -185, but those are more valuable points because they're more damaging. Like the gap in investment is a lot larger for return between 142 and 185 than say
342 and 385.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. So the percentages, this one makes more sense to me. The other ones are just a little bit interesting because realistically it's a 2-point move, and I would imagine that 3, 4, and 5 are key numbers, right? So this speaks to me a little bit more as far as congruency, and clearly there's some reason to like the Raptors. Who knows what kind of news has pushed it this way? Perhaps and to put some speculation on it too. I wouldn't imagine that it's detrimental injury news considering the market for the over/under. Which take it away.
OU opened at 216. It's a bet up to 219. 63% of bettors have helped push that over up 3 points.
Yeah, exactly. So that's usually not correlated with negative injury news. So a little bit interesting, unless it's a defender. But as far as my limited basketball knowledge, I thought they didn't play defense in the NBA. So 216 to 219 with, I would imagine, the one interesting thing, though, is where the money percentage lies. Like maybe I would imagine that it's 63% is on the over, but it's probably more like 90% of the money. I mean, it is early, 870 bets, so it is possible to be that lopsided as we've seen many, many, many times before. But I would be interested in seeing those exact figures.
Next up, we have the Pacers Pelicans, 643 bets on this 8 p.m. Eastern time start. Pelicans opened as 1-point favorites at home. They've been bet up to -1.5. 64% of bettors and 99% of the money helping bet that Pelican line up half a point. And then the money line hasn't moved too much either, -111 to -117, but 36% of bettors on the Pelicans money line.
I would be willing to bet that 99% of money is very, very minimal, like in compared to what the total handle they're expecting on this game. And not to mention too, it gives you a good idea of what that half point is worth, because maybe 6/117. This isn't exact, right? This is at a glance math, but yeah, that seems more in line to me, because some of these money line movements, again, I could be wrong, but they seem outlandish almost, and I'd like to do a little bit more calculation as we get more data and the season continues. But this seems pretty standard so far.
And then the OU for this game opened at 218, bet down to 217. The bet percentages are split pretty even, so not a lot to talk about other than that line moving down.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit more money on the under, I would imagine, right? Because bet percentages is volume. The money percentage, it says 100 there, but we don't actually have the figure. So I'd imagine that there's probably one or two large bets out of probably 120 that bet on the OU out of the 640, because it's all combined. So think of it, all it takes is one or two large bets, and then that way it would move the line under.
And then for the next game, we have Pistons-Bucks. Only 340 bets on this game early on. Bucks opened at a very, very large 15.5-point favorites. They've been bet up to 16-point favorites, and they have received 75% of early bets.
Yeah, but this is... Wow, like... So it moved, what? Worst juice and half a point. And just from NFL experience, a half point between 15.5 and 16 probably isn't the same as like a half point between, especially in basketball, like 1.5 and 2. Like, I can't imagine that really being that big a deal. But then look at the money line. You almost have to invest 33% more between 1578 and 220 to make the same profit, right? Like, that just seems bizarre. You know what I mean?
And that's probably why we're getting 69% of bets on the Pistons money line, because it's not congruent. It just doesn't correlate.
It doesn't correlate at all. Like, that is massive. And this is the other thing too, is you're going to say, well, the Pistons are never going to beat the Bucks. No, like, they are sometimes. You know what I mean? Accidents happen. Anything could happen, and people could get injured. And the thing is, to break even on this bet, what do you got to be, right? 1-12. It's not asking much, really isn't. And the other thing too, it's a huge difference between 1-10 and 1-12, realistically, because this is just bizarre to me. I don't know. I have a theory for next season, because if you're able to really have it down to a number, what everything's worth, you can see inefficiencies in both markets. And sometimes it'll be the spread that is, well, most times I feel like the spread is, the money line market is inefficient in compared to the spread market. But I bet you're going to be able to find it in reverse as well. And you could probably just take the best of it blindly and win, as long as you know what a point is worth, right? And that's really all it is. And this is bizarre to me. So that half point and that 5/108 of juice is worth almost 500 to it's worth 25%. Doesn't make any sense. So this is the most interesting thing I've seen so far. Not to mention, how often do you see a minus 2,000 favorite?
Yeah,
like in anything, really.
Pretty rare. This is like boxing odds right now that we're looking at.
Even worse.
The OU opened at 225. It's been bet down to 224. 95% of early bettors are on the under, helping push that line down 1 point.
That almost, yeah, but then the juice is I guess I got a worse line, worse juice. But the thing that's interesting about that is, if the market likes the under, doesn't that favor the Pistons just a hair? Because it's not like not that we know anything. We know a little bit about both teams, but like, doesn't a higher score favor the Bucks?
I have no clue. I have no clue how that translates at all. I think you and I are here to talk about the market, and that's basically it. But I know what you mean. That's if the OU went up 10 points, you'd be thinking like, oh, the Bucks are just gonna, destroy them by scoring a ton of points. But the other thing too is like the Bucks could get up 30 points at the end of the third quarter and just throw in whoever. So
I guess that's
it's one of
true.
those things where the OU, there's so many different factors in the NBA. Like even guys talking yesterday, like there'll be 30-point games, they'll be on the under, and then a guy's gonna, with 3 seconds left, he's gonna run down the court for a layup when no one's defending him. So like,
that does happen.
There's weird things that happen in the NBA. I don't think you and I are gonna be jumping on the OU for the Pistons Bucks game. Let's put it that way.
You have to posit theories here and there because you have to mold them. You know what I mean? We have the data in front of us, so it's about analyzing and positing theories. So that is one thing that I find very interesting.
340 bets on the Mavs Rockets game. Rockets opened at 2.5-point favorites. They've been bet up to -4.5. When you talk about spreads to money lines, like this doesn't correlate to me because Rockets opened at -140 on the money line, currently -175. So there's no way that 2.5 to 4.5 is -140 to -175.
When you looked at what was the other one, it was the Pelicans. They went from one.
I want to say the Raptors. So the Raptors moved 1.5, jumped 40 points. So this one actually jumped less in a full 2-point swing.
Exactly. So this makes you, when I was speaking about inefficiencies in the last one, this makes you think Rockets at 175 is probably a bit of a bargain. Point in case, early bettors and who's really betting at this time. They like the volume is higher on the Rockets. That makes sense to me because this is probably lopsided.
I do have one thing to say, though, is that not every spread and money line comes out at the same time. So also we could be looking at a spread that came out last night and a money line that came out this morning. So it's one of those things where if you were going to use this information, just make sure you check the time because a lot of places will have a timestamp where you can line up what the spread was and what the money line was at that point. And there's a chance that the numbers that we have here for any of these games might not line up completely. So it's something to keep in mind.
But at the end of the day, Big Rye, look at it. It's -4.5. Both teams are currently -4.5, -107. One you have to lay 185 and one you have to lay 175.
Yeah, and those for sure those were taken at the exact same time. So that's a screenshot that the fat guy's talking about where in the Celtics game, it looks like it's better to take the Celtics money line because you can get +166. In the Mavericks Rockets game, though, it looks like it would be better to take the Mavericks at +4.5, -103.
Yeah, or conversely, taking the Raptors ATS and the Rockets in the money line. So I mean, there's some interesting non-congruency that you don't really see in football, to be honest.
And then the over-under for this game, it opened at 228. It's been bet up to 231. 83% of bettors are on the over.
Yeah, and then there's been a pretty steep shift, 3 points. I would imagine 83% and probably even more of the money, probably 90 percentile, I would guess. We don't have that figure there, obviously. And but the other interesting thing, there's only 340 bets, but I would imagine that these are pretty heavy ones to move at 3 points. I would imagine 3 points are less valuable from the 228 starting point as perhaps a 222. So it is a little bit more elastic and probably has a lower threshold. But the handle is a little bit higher than usual, I would imagine, for an over-under market that's so infantile.
And then on to the last game of the night, 10 p.m. Eastern time start, 756 bets on the Kings Warriors. Kings opened at 2.5-point favorites on the road. They've been bet down to 2-point favorites. 71% of bets and 90% of the money is on the Kings.
Yeah, and then that would make hold on here.
This is interesting because it's a reverse line movement.
It is a reverse line movement, yeah.
The Warriors going from +2.5 to +2, despite only receiving 29% of bets and 10% of the money.
Yeah, and then to correlate again, I wonder when, because it says 45% of the bets, 88% of the money on the money line. When was most of that 88% paid for, or sorry, bought the Kings at? Minus 136, minus 130, minus 121. We can only speculate. So I'm wondering if that's a really good line, the minus 121. But the reverse line movement is interesting because all signs point to the Kings, and all money is being wagered on the Kings, and they're lowering the price of the Kings and raising the price of the Warriors. So these are reverse line movements, which are, I mean, it's hard. It's very like it's all speculation to say why. Perhaps there are very early sharps that like the Warriors, and despite not having the same market impact, their selections are taken more seriously by the book. That's always a theory.
And then the OU for this game, it opened at 233. It's been bet up to 234. Juice also pushing up to minus 114 on the over. 56% of bets and 97% of the money is on the over in this game.
Yeah. Look at that juice. That's crazy. Minus 114. You know, I guess they're really incentivizing to take the under, and take the under at that number too. That's interesting because I like the thinking behind this, because wouldn't I guess there's a middling opportunity, but I mean, wouldn't you move it to like 236 or something, or 235? But instead it's just 1 point, but the juice is so huge, right? And then it's really begging you to take the under because you're getting plus money. You only have to be right. What do you have to be right here, Big Dry? 48.5%.
Yeah, the
break
plus
even.
103, 49.4%, somewhere around there.
Yeah, like
what's interesting to note for this game is that, or at least for the over-under in this game, is the Warriors played last night, and Steph Curry scored 62 points. So it's one of those things where I'm sure there was a lot of bettors who went, Curry's on fire. He's playing really well. Let's take the over. So I have a feeling that this has adjusted up, and the juice is up. So a lot of square bettors jumping on a Warriors over at the minus 114 juice. So it might be an opportunity for sharp bettors to take the under, especially at plus 103.
Plus 103, yeah. And that's a good point, because squares don't really care what price. And we already went over that with the Fox bet at laying minus 125, which is absolutely insane. So they usually don't look at the juice thing. They might look at the payout, but they don't actually do the math. So whereas we care immensely about that type of stuff. Not that we're Japanese katana sharp, but we're of reasonable knowledge on this type of win-loss result. So it is a little bit interesting that perhaps it is a good way to separate pros and Joes, is using that type of juice function.
I just lost my half unit under on katana references in this stream. So
yeah, there you go.
Thanks for that loss.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's it for the NBA betting market January 4th. Good luck, guys. There's some interesting markets, and good luck for your January 4th wagers.